Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1, Above the Clouds. The twin-engine Cessna hummed through the night sky at 15,000 feet, a speck of metal suspended between Earth and stars. Inside the cramped cabin, Clayton Lowry fought to keep his one good eye open. The other had swollen shut an hour ago, courtesy of the 5 men who'd worked him over in the hangar before they loaded him aboard. His ribs screamed with each shallow breath. Blood had dried in a crusty trail from his broken nose to his chin. But Clayton's mind remained sharp as Damascus steel, the same clarity that had kept him alive through 2 decades in the 75th Ranger Regiment, the same instinct that had carried him through Mogadishu, Kandahar, and a dozen black sites whose names never made it into official reports. You really thought you'd get away with it? The voice belonged to Jeremy Cooley, a real estate developer with soft hands and hard eyes. He stood near the cabin door in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Clayton's monthly pension. Behind him, the door gaped open, a rectangle of howling wind and infinite darkness. Clayton tested his bonds. Zip ties, professional grade. His wrists were lashed behind his back, secured to the cargo rings welded into the floor. His feet were bound at the ankles. Someone knew what they were doing. Get away with what? Clayton's voice came out as a rasp. Loving my wife? Jeremy laughed, a sound without warmth. Your wife? He turned to the woman sitting in the co-pilot's seat, her profile illuminated by the instrument panel's green glow. Elaine, honey, you want to explain to him? Elaine Newton, legally still Elaine Lowry for another 6 weeks until the divorce finalized, swiveled the seat around. She'd changed since Clayton deployed to Syria 3 years ago. The gentle curves had sharpened into angles. The soft brown eyes that once looked at him with something resembling love now held only cold calculation. You were never supposed to come back, Clayton, she said matter-of-factly, as if discussing weekend plans. The life insurance policy was very specific. Combat death, $1.2 million. Tax-free. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. 3 years ago, when his unit deployed on what was supposed to be a 6-month rotation, Elaine had insisted he update his insurance. Just to be safe, she'd said. For us. He'd signed the papers without reading the fine print, too focused on pre-deployment preparations. 6 months became 12, then 18. Then 3 full years of classified operations that he couldn't discuss, in places he couldn't name, doing things that would never appear in his service record. The letters from Elaine had grown less frequent, more distant. By year 2, they'd stopped entirely. He'd told himself it was the strain of separation. Now he understood it was something else entirely. But I did come back, Clayton said. Inconvenient. Very, Jeremy agreed. He gestured to the 5 men crowded in the rear of the cabin, thick-necked enforcers in tactical gear who looked like they graduated from the same school of blunt force trauma. Which is why we're fixing that problem. No body, no crime. Just another tragic accident. Veterans suffering from PTSD takes an unauthorized joyride, crashes into the Atlantic. They'll find wreckage eventually. Very sad. Elaine will be devastated. I'm sure she'll recover, Clayton said dryly, with $1.2 million to console her. Elaine stood and crossed the cabin, steadying herself against the bulkhead. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, but she didn't flinch. You made this so easy, Clayton. Coming home unannounced. No warning. Walking into our house like you still belong there. Our house. She'd said it so casually. Their home on Maple Street. The modest 3-bedroom they'd bought when he made Sergeant First Class. Where they talked about starting a family. Where he'd left her with a kiss and a promise to come home safe. The night he returned, 48 hours ago, he'd found Jeremy's Mercedes in the driveway. Found clothes that didn't belong to him in his closet. Found his wedding photo face down in a drawer. He'd confronted Elaine. She made a phone call. 20 minutes later, 5 men had shown up and beaten him unconscious in his own living room. The attorney said we had to wait for the divorce. Elaine continued. Something about fraud if you died too soon after I filed. But Jeremy found a better solution. She smiled. The same smile he'd once found beautiful. Now it looked like a shark showing teeth. A cleaner solution. Jeremy checked his watch. a Rolex submariner that caught the instrument lights. We're over the Atlantic now, 3 miles from shore. Water's cold this time of year. Hypothermia in minutes, even if the fall doesn't kill you. He nodded to his men. Bring him up. The enforcers moved with practiced efficiency. 2 of them cut Clayton's ankle restraints while the others kept guns trained on him. Not that he could do much. Between the beating and the zip ties, he was operating at maybe 30% capacity. They hauled him to his feet. Pain exploded through his ribs. Definitely broken. At least 3. His left knee, which had taken shrapnel in Mosul, screamed in protest. But he kept his face neutral, showing nothing. Any last words? Jeremy asked, positioning himself by the open door. Wind howled through the cabin, making conversation difficult. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Clayton looked at Elaine one final time. Searched for any trace of the woman he'd married 8 years ago. Found nothing but a stranger wearing her face. Yeah, he said. I want you to remember this moment. Touching, Jeremy sneered. He grabbed Clayton's shoulder. No parachute. No witnesses. No problem. Elaine nodded, her expression unchanged. Make it quick. They shoved him toward the door. And Clayton Lowry fell into the night. Chapter 2. Terminal Velocity. The wind hit him like a freight train, spinning him into a chaotic tumble. The Cessna's lights receded rapidly above him, banking away toward the coast. In seconds, it was gone. Just another star in the vast darkness. 10,000 feet. Clayton forced himself to stop spinning. Years of airborne training kicked in automatically. Arch the back, spread arms and legs, find a stable position. The chaos resolved into something manageable. He was falling at approximately 120 miles per hour. At this altitude, he had roughly 40 seconds before impact. Most people would panic. Most people hadn't completed 847 military jumps, including 73 combat insertions. Most people hadn't survived a total chute malfunction over Afghanistan by riding his reserve down through a sandstorm and rolling into a 12-foot dune. Most people weren't Clayton Lowry. He assessed his situation with the cold logic that separated Rangers from civilians. Wrists zip-tied behind his back, problematic but not insurmountable. No parachute, significant, but he'd planned for worse. The beating had compromised his mobility, but adrenaline was a hell of a drug. 8,000 feet. His hands were going numb from the plastic cutting into his wrists, but he still had some movement. He'd spent 20 years training his body to perform under impossible conditions. The human body was remarkably flexible when properly motivated, and falling to your death provided excellent motivation. Clayton contorted his shoulders, working his arms down and under his hips, a technique he'd learned from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor in Rio during a joint training op. The zip ties bit deeper, drawing blood, but he felt them slide past his tailbone. The pain was exquisite. He ignored it. 6,000 feet. Arms now in front. Better. He brought his wrists to his mouth and used his teeth, the ones that weren't loose from the beating, to find the locking mechanism on the zip ties. It took precious seconds, but he'd practiced this blind during SEER training. The plastic gave way with a snap. Free. For 1,000 feet. Clayton spread into a stable arch again and scanned the darkness below. Moonlight reflected off the Atlantic in broken silver patterns. He spotted what he was looking for, a container ship, maybe 600 feet long, cutting through the water 2 miles to his east. Its deck lights made it stand out like a beacon. He'd need to adjust his trajectory. At this altitude, with no canopy drag, he could glide maybe half a mile. The ship was moving at maybe 15 knots. He did the math in his head, factoring wind speed, his current descent rate, the ship's heading. It would be close. 3,000 feet. He turned his body into a wing, angling toward the ship. Every skydiver knew the basics of tracking. How to use your body to move horizontally through the air. Clayton had mastered it to an art form. He pulled his arms tight to his sides, pressed his legs together, and tilted his head down, increasing his forward speed while sacrificing some vertical stability. The ship grew larger. He could make out details now. Cargo container stacked 6 high, a superstructure at the stern, a small crane amidships. 2,000 feet. Too fast. He was coming in too fast and too steep. He needed to slow down, change his angle of descent, or he'd crater into the deck at terminal velocity. A fall from this height into water was survivable, barely. A fall onto steel deck plating was not. Clayton had one option left, and it was insane. But insane had kept him alive in places where sane men died. He pulled out his track and spread into a maximum drag position, arms and legs wide, chest to the earth like a flying squirrel. His descent rate slowed dramatically. 120 became 90 miles per hour. Still lethal, but better. 1,000 feet. The ship's deck filled his vision. He could see crew members moving around, unaware of the man falling from the sky above them. He spotted his target, a stack of cargo containers on the port side, their tops forming a stepped pyramid. If he could hit the highest container at the right angle. 500 feet. Airborne, Clayton whispered the old Ranger motto, and pulled his arms and legs tight again. 300 feet. The container rushed up to meet him. He had maybe a half-second to adjust. He tucked his chin, rolled his shoulders forward, and impact. Clayton hit the corrugated metal roof of the container at 60 miles per hour. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. He rolled with the impact, distributing the force across his shoulders and back rather than taking it on any single point. The container's roof buckled under him with a sound like a bomb going off. He bounced, rolled, slid across the metal surface, friction burning through his shirt. His momentum carried him over the edge. His hand shot out, fingers closing around the container's corner brace. The jolt nearly ripped his arm from its socket, but he held on. For a moment he hung there, suspended 40 feet above the deck, every muscle screaming. Then he heard shouting in Mandarin. Footsteps on metal. A klaxon started wailing. Clayton's lips pulled back in something that wasn't quite a smile. He was alive, broken, bleeding, and hanging from a cargo container in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but alive. And Jeremy Cooley had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Chapter 3. Ghosts and Deaths. The ship was the Zheng He, a Chinese-flagged container vessel making the run from Newark to Shenzhen. The crew found Clayton collapsed on the deck, covered in blood and barely conscious. They spoke almost no English. He spoke enough Mandarin, courtesy of 6 months embedded with Taiwanese special forces, to communicate the basics. Airplane, he managed, pointing at the sky. Fall. Accident. The first mate, a wiry man named Chun, looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Fall? From plane. He said something rapid fire to the other crew members. They responded with equally incredulous shouts. American? Chun asked. Clayton nodded. He'd lost his wallet in the beating, but he still had his dog tags under his shirt. He pulled them out. The mate examined them, then made a decision. Come. Captain, see you. They took him to the ship's medical bay, a cramped room that smelled of antiseptic and diesel fuel. The ship's medic, an older man with steady hands, went to work. Cleaned wounds, taped ribs, gave him pills that made the pain recede to something manageable. You very lucky, the medic said in broken English. Very, very lucky. Yeah, Clayton said. Lucky. The captain arrived an hour later, a barrel-chested man in his 50s who introduced himself as Captain Wong. He studied Clayton with intelligent eyes that had seen a lot of ocean and didn't believe in coincidences. Mr. Chun say you fall from airplane, Wong said, his English considerably better than his crew's. In middle of Atlantic. No parachute. Land on my ship. He raised an eyebrow. This is very unusual story. I specialize in unusual, Clayton said. Military. Wong nodded at the dog tags. Was. Retired. Wong pulled up a chair. I am required by maritime law to report this incident. Coast Guard will want questions answered, but we are 2 days from port. In meantime, he spread his hands. You're a guest on my ship. We have food, bed, medical care. You need anything, you ask. I need a phone, Clayton said. Satellite connection. Wong hesitated. Expensive. $20 per minute. Clayton reached into his boot, the only place the thugs hadn't searched thoroughly, and pulled out a small waterproof bag. Inside was an emergency credit card and $300 cash. Ranger habit. Always have a backup plan and the resources to execute it. I'll pay, he said, handing over half the cash. Wong pocketed it with a nod. I get phone. The satellite call connected on the third ring. Goldstein Investigations. Talk to me. The voice belonged to Gregory Goldstein, one of 3 people Clayton trusted absolutely. They'd served together in the 75th, done 2 tours side by side, saved each other's lives more times than either could count. When Gregory mustered out, he'd started a private investigation firm in Boston. Did good work. Stayed off the radar. Greg, it's Clay. A pause. Clay? Jesus Christ, man, where are you? Elaine reported you missing 2 days ago. Said you were having some kind of episode, drove off, and never came back. She filed a missing persons report. Made a big scene at the station, crying, the whole 9 yards. She's good at scenes, Clayton said. I'm not missing. I'm on a container ship in the middle of the Atlantic because her boyfriend tried to throw me out of an airplane. Silence. Then say again. Clayton laid it out. The affair. The life insurance. The beating. The flight. The fall. Gregory listened without interrupting, another Ranger trait. When Clayton finished, Gregory let out a low whistle. That's elaborate and completely fucking insane. Yeah, but you survived. I survived. Of course you did. A sound like Gregory was lighting a cigarette, a habit he'd picked up in Kandahar and never dropped. Okay, I'm assuming you want me to dig into this Jeremy Cooley character. Find out what we're dealing with. Everything, Clayton said. His business, his finances, his connections. I want to know how a real estate developer gets 5 trained thugs on speed dial. That's not normal rich guy behavior. On it. What else? I need you to check on someone for me. Kurt Campbell. Last I heard, he was working private security in Virginia. Campbell. Gregory's tone changed. Your old spotter? The one who could put a round through a keyhole at 800 meters. That's the one. I need to know if he's available for contract work. Clay, whatever you're planning. They tried to kill me, Greg. They beat me. They threw me out of an airplane. And Elaine, his voice went cold. Elaine was ready to cash in my life insurance before my body even hit the water. I know, brother. I know. But this needs to be smart. Legal. We do this right. We put them away for attempted murder. Life sentences, no parole. That's one option, Clayton said. And the other option? Clayton watched the Atlantic roll past, dark and endless. Somewhere on the eastern seaboard, Jeremy Cooley and Elaine were probably celebrating, toasting his death with expensive champagne, planning how to spend his life insurance. We'll see, he said. First I need information. Then I'll decide. Clay, 2 days, Greg. That's when this ship makes port. I want everything you can find on Jeremy Cooley by then. His business partners, his properties, his dirty laundry. Everything. Gregory sighed. You always were stubborn. Okay, I'll run it down. But Clay, be careful. These people already tried to kill you once. They won't hesitate to try again. I'm counting on it, Clayton said, and ended the call. Captain Wong found him on deck an hour later, standing at the rail and staring at the horizon. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. You okay? Wong asked. Been better, Clayton admitted. Been worse, too. What you do now? When we reach port, Clayton thought about Elaine's cold eyes, Jeremy's smug smile, the 5 thugs who'd work him over in his own home. He thought about 20 years serving his country, about the men who'd died beside him, about the code he'd lived by: never quit, never surrender, never leave a fallen comrade. They'd made a mistake. They'd thought he was just another veteran to be discarded, another obstacle to be eliminated. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. Now, Clayton said, now I go hunting. Chapter 4, Pieces on the Board. The Jeanne docked in Norfolk 2 days later. Clayton walked off the ship wearing borrowed clothes and carrying nothing but the contents of his waterproof bag. Captain Wong had refused additional payment, instead pressing a business card into Clayton's hand. You need shipping, Wong said. You call me. I give you good price. For man who falls from sky and lives? Very good price. Clayton thanked him and caught a cab to a motel 6 miles from the port, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. He paid for a week, locked the door, and called Gregory. Tell me you've got something. Oh, I've got something, Gregory said. Jeremy Cooley is a piece of work. On the surface, he's legitimate. Owns Cooley Development Corporation, specializes in luxury residential properties. High-end condos, gated communities, that sort of thing. Revenue last year was about $40 million. Not bad. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 years ago, Cooley Development was basically bankrupt. Jeremy had overextended on a project in Richmond, got caught when the market crashed. He was looking at Chapter 11, maybe criminal charges for defrauding investors. Let me guess, Clayton said. He made a miraculous recovery. Bingo. Suddenly he's got new investors, new capital, new projects. The company goes from dying to thriving in about 6 months. And guess who one of his biggest investors is? Tell me. Omar Mercado. Ever heard of him? Clayton's jaw tightened. Yeah, I've heard of him. Omar Mercado was a name that appeared in classified briefings, the kind of folders marked eyes only and kept in secure facilities. East Coast organized crime with tentacles in construction, unions, gambling, and trafficking. The FBI had been trying to build a RICO case against him for a decade, but Mercado was smart, insulated himself with layers of legitimate business and disposable subordinates. Mercado owns 40% of Cooley Development through shell companies, Gregory continued. Jeremy's basically a frontman. The real money comes from Mercado's operations. They use the development company to launder it, buy property with dirty cash, develop it with clean loans, sell at market rate. Rinse and repeat. That explains the muscle, Clayton said. Those 5 guys who worked me over weren't private security. They were Mercado's men. Right. I did some digging on that front, too. Your description matches a crew that works out of a place called the Anchor Club, a gentleman's establishment in downtown Norfolk. Owned on paper by a guy named Chester Banks, but everyone knows it's Mercado's operation. Banks manages the place, but he's basically just a glorified bouncer with a liquor license. Clayton filed that away. What about Elaine? How does she fit? That's where it gets personal. Gregory's tone shifted. Elaine met Jeremy about 6 months into your deployment. Charity fundraiser at some country club. Jeremy was there trolling for investors. Elaine was volunteering. They started seeing each other. Discreetly at first. How discreet? Motel discreet. I've got credit card receipts showing Jeremy paying for rooms at the Harborview Inn. Same days Elaine's phone pings towers near that location. This went on for about 8 months before it moved to your house. Clayton's hands clenched. She brought him to our home. Yeah, I'm sorry, brother. Gregory paused. But here's the thing. Elaine's not just in this for the affair. I pulled her financials. She's been moving money. Small amounts at first, then larger chunks. Transferred from your joint account to a new account in her name only. Over the past 2 years, she's siphoned off about $60,000. Jesus. And get this, she's got a new account at the same bank Cooley uses for his development company. Opened 3 months ago. Balance is currently 0, but I'm betting that changes real fast once your life insurance pays out. Clayton stared at the motel ceiling, piecing it together. They've been planning this for a while. Waited until I was deployed, moved money, set up the insurance. When I came home early, I ruined the timeline. Exactly. So they improvised. Quick, dirty, and very illegal. Which brings me to the good news. You've got them dead to rights on attempted murder. I've been documenting everything. Phone records, financial transactions, the flight plan for that Cessna. We bring this to the FBI, they'll eat it up. Cooley and Elaine go down, and probably Mercado too, if we can connect him to the actual attempt. That's the legal route. That's the smart route, Gregory corrected. Clay, I know you want payback. I get it. But we're not in Afghanistan anymore. We do this by the book, we win. We go vigilante, and you end up in prison or dead. Maybe, Clayton said. Or maybe there's a third option, which is, I'm still working on it, but I'm going to need some help. Did you reach out to Kurt Campbell? A sigh. Yeah, I called him. He's interested. Also concerned. Said, and I quote, if Clay's planning what I think he's planning, tell him I'm in, but also tell him he's crazy. Sounds like Kurt. He could be here in 2 days. What else do you need? Clayton thought for a moment. A clean vehicle. Something anonymous. Cash. As much as you could spare. And I need you to keep monitoring Elaine and Jeremy. I want to know where they go, who they talk to, what they're planning. Done. Anything else? Yeah. I need you to find someone for me. Woman named Violet Perry. Used to be a JAG officer. Now she's in private practice. Criminal defense. She handled a case for a guy in my unit about 5 years back. I remember her. Smart as hell. Mean as a snake in court. Why do you need a lawyer? Because, Clayton said, if this goes the way I'm planning, I might need a very good defense attorney. Kurt Campbell arrived 2 days later, driving a beat-up Ford F-150 that had seen better decades. He was exactly as Clayton remembered, 6'3", lean as a whip, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that never stopped scanning. He'd been the best sniper in their battalion, with confirmed kills in 3 countries that officially the U.S. had never operated in. You look like shit, Kurt said by way of greeting. Fell out of an airplane, Clayton replied. Tends to mess up your complexion. They clasped hands, then pulled into a brief hug, the kind of embrace shared by men who'd seen death together and come out the other side. Greg filled me in, Kurt said. Your wife and her boyfriend tried to kill you for insurance money. That about the size of it. Add in a mob connection and 5 guys who beat the hell out of me. And yeah, that's the size of it. Hell of a thing. Kurt pulled a duffel bag from the truck bed. I brought some tools. Figured you might need them. The bag contained exactly what Clayton expected. Surveillance equipment, weapons disassembled and legally transported, tactical gear, and enough electronics to set up a small intelligence operation. Good man, Clayton said. How much do you know about Omar Mercado? Enough to know he's bad news. East Coast mob. Untouchable. Why? Because he's Jeremy Cooley's silent partner. Which means the guys who tried to kill me were Mercado's guys. Which means this is bigger than just a cheating wife and her boyfriend. Kurt whistled low. You planning to go after a mob boss? Not exactly. I'm planning to make him wish he'd never heard my name. That's a fine distinction. I've got a plan, Clayton said. It's complicated, probably illegal in several states, and has about a dozen ways it could go sideways. Kurt grinned, the same wild grin he'd worn before every mission in Afghanistan. Brother, those are my favorite kind of plans. What do you need me to do? Chapter 5. Setting the hook. The Anchor Club sat on a corner lot in a part of Norfolk where the streetlights were mostly broken and the cops didn't patrol unless absolutely necessary. It advertised itself as a gentleman's club, but everyone knew it was Mercado's headquarters, the place where he conducted business, collected debts, and occasionally made people disappear. Clayton and Kurt watched it from a rooftop across the street, using thermal imaging and long-range optics. They'd been in position for 6 hours, mapping the building's layout, identifying personnel, tracking patterns. For guards on rotation, Kurt murmured, I pressed to a spotting scope. 2 at the door, 2 inside. Shift change every 6 hours. Looks like Chester Banks runs the day-to-day. Big guy, shaved head, walks like he's got concrete in his shoes. That's him, Clayton confirmed. He's the one who coordinated the beating. I remember his voice. Security cameras? 12 visible. Probably more hidden. Wired to a central system. Likely monitored off-site. Clayton lowered his binoculars. We can't go in hard. Too many eyes, too much backup. So we go in soft. Social engineering. Something like that. Clayton pulled out a burner phone. Time to make a call. He dialed the number Gregory had provided, a direct line to Chester Banks' cell. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Yeah. Mr. Banks? My name is Alan Roman. I represent some investors who are interested in acquiring commercial property in the Norfolk area. We understand you have connections that might be valuable to us. A pause. Who gave you this number? Jeremy Cooley. He spoke very highly of your organizational skills. Another pause, longer this time. In the background, Clayton heard music and voices, the club's ambient noise. Cooley sent you? That's right. We're looking to move quickly on a substantial investment. 8 figures. We'd like to discuss terms. Chester's tone changed, became more interested. 8 figures is serious money. What kind of property we talking about? Waterfront development. Prime location. The kind of project that requires discretion and the right kind of partners. Clayton let that hang. Mr. Cooley suggested you might be able to arrange a meeting with your principal. My principal? A chuckle. You mean Omar Mercado? If that's who handles these matters, then yes. Hang on. The line went muffled, Chester covering the phone. Muted conversation. Then, Mr. Mercado doesn't meet with people off the street. He's a busy man. Understand, which is why we're prepared to demonstrate our seriousness. Wire transfer, good faith deposit, $500,000 placed in escrow, released upon successful negotiation. That got attention. $500,000 as a deposit. Correct. We're not amateurs, Mr. Banks. We know how business works in your world. We're willing to play by those rules. But we need a face-to-face meeting. 3 days from now. Location of Mr. Mercado's choosing. He can bring whatever security makes him comfortable. Chester was hooked now. Clayton could hear it in his voice. $500,000 was serious money, even for Mercado. I'll relay the message. How do I contact you? I'll call you tomorrow, same time. If Mr. Mercado is interested, we'll proceed. If not, Clayton shrugged, though Chester couldn't see it. We'll take our business elsewhere. He ended the call. Kurt looked at him. You really have $500,000 to put in escrow? Nope, but I've got 3 days to make Mercado think I do. Ow! Clayton smiled. That's where Violet Perry comes in. Violet Perry kept an office in downtown Norfolk, a converted brownstone that screamed old money and professional competence. Her secretary, a stern woman who looked like she ate junior associates for breakfast, tried to turn Clayton away at the door. Ms. Perry doesn't see walk-ins. You'll need to make an appointment. Her calendar is booked through next month. Tell her it's about Clayton Lowry. She'll remember the name. The secretary looked skeptical but picked up the phone. Spoke quietly. Her eyebrows rose. She hung up. Ms. Perry will see you now. Violet Perry's office was all dark wood and law books, with diplomas from Georgetown on the wall and a Bar Association award on her desk. She stood when Clayton entered, a woman in her late 30s, sharply dressed, with intelligent green eyes that missed nothing. Clayton Lowry, she said, offering her hand. I defended one of your unit members, Sergeant Martinez, court-martial over that incident in Kabul. I remember. You got the charges dropped. The charges were bullshit. Martinez was defending himself. The Army just needed a scapegoat. She gestured to a chair. I heard you left the service. Retired, right? 3 months ago. And now you're here, looking like you've been through a wood chipper. Let me guess. You need legal representation for something that's probably going to make my Bar Association very nervous. Clayton liked her immediately. How good are you with complex financial fraud cases? Very good. Why? Because I need to convince a mob boss that I'm a legitimate investor with $500,000 in escrow, when in fact I have approximately $3,000 to my name and a burning desire to destroy everyone who tried to kill me. Violet leaned back in her chair. That's quite an opener. Tell me everything. He did. The whole story. Elaine, Jeremy, the beating, the airplane, the fall, the plan currently taking shape. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When he finished, she set down her pen. So let me make sure I understand. You want to run a con on Omar Mercado, using fake financial documents and a non-existent escrow account, in order to get close enough to gather evidence of his connection to your attempted murder. Evidence which you will then use to either have him arrested or leverage him into destroying Jeremy Cooley and your wife. That's the basic idea. It's insane. I've had worse ideas. Name one. Free falling into the Atlantic Ocean from 15,000 feet. Violet laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her severe features. Fair point. Okay, let's talk logistics. Creating convincing financial documents is easy. I can draft escrow agreements, wire transfer authorizations, corporate papers. All technically legal as long as we don't actually execute any of it. The problem is verification. If Mercado's smart, and he is, he'll want to verify the money exists before he meets. Can we fake that? For about 48 hours. I have contacts at a couple of banks who can create temporary holds that look like incoming wire transfers. It'll show up in an account balance, but won't actually clear. By the time anyone realizes it's smoke and mirrors, you'll have had your meeting. And if Mercado checks before then you're screwed. She tapped her pen against the desk. This is incredibly risky, Clayton. If Mercado figures out you're running a game on him, he won't just kill you. He'll make it slow. I know. And if by some miracle this works, you'll have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. At which point, what? You go to the police? The FBI? Maybe. Or maybe I use it to make Mercado dismantle Jeremy Cooley's entire operation. Seize his assets, ruin his business, leave him with nothing. The same way he tried to leave me. Violet studied him for a long moment. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're planning to manipulate a criminal organization into doing your dirty work. That's not justice, Clayton. That's vigilantism. They threw me out of an airplane, Clayton said quietly. Beat me unconscious. Planned to cash in my life insurance. And in about 6 weeks, my wife gets to walk away with everything while Jeremy Cooley goes back to laundering money for the mob. You tell me where justice fits in that equation. Silence. Then Violet nodded slowly. Okay, I'll help you. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. No cowboy bullshit. You follow my lead on the legal side, and if things go sideways, you come to me immediately. Deal. Clayton extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it. Good, Violet said. Now, let's go ruin some lives. Chapter 6. The Devil's Details. 24 hours later, Clayton had an identity. Alan Roman, investment consultant, representing a consortium of foreign investors interested in American commercial real estate. Violet had worked her magic, created a website for Roman Investments, LLC, complete with portfolio photos, stock images, testimonials, fabricated, and a contact address, a mail drop in Delaware. She'd also opened a business account at Norfolk First Bank and arranged for a pending wire transfer of $500,000 from a Cayman Islands holding company. On paper, it looked legitimate. In reality, the transfer would never arrive, and the account would be flagged and frozen within 72 hours. You've got a small window, Violet explained, spreading documents across her conference table. Mercado will verify the account. He'll see the pending transfer. That'll be enough to get you in the room. But if he waits too long or digs too deep, it falls apart. Kurt studied the papers. What about background checks? If Mercado runs Alan Roman through any kind of database, he'll know it's fake. I've seeded some basic information, Violet said. Enough to pass a surface check. Driver's license, credit history, property records. But nothing deep. If he brings in a real investigator, we're burnt. Clayton nodded. Then we move fast. Get the meeting, gather what we need, and get out. What exactly are we gathering? Kurt asked. Evidence. Testimony. Recording of Mercado connecting himself to Jeremy Cooley and the attempted murder. Something we can use. Violet pulled out a small device. A high-end recording pen that looked exactly like an expensive fountain pen. This is audio and video. 4-hour battery. Encrypted storage. Even if they search you, they'll just think it's a pen. Assuming they don't make me strip, Clayton said. If they make you strip, you've got bigger problems. The burner phone rang. Chester Banks. Clayton answered. Mr. Banks. Tell me good news. Mr. Mercado is interested. He'll meet you tomorrow night, 9 p.m., at a location I'll text you 1 hour before. You come alone. No backup, no weapons, no recording devices. If we find anything, the meeting ends and you end. Clear. Crystal clear. Am I escrow? Our people verified it. Money's legit. Mr. Mercado appreciates professionals. A pause. Don't make him regret this. I wouldn't dream of it, Clayton said, and ended the call. Violet looked at him. You really going in alone? That's what they demanded. They're going to search you. Pat you down. Maybe more. I know. Kurt leaned forward. Clay, this is suicide. You walk in there alone, you're at their mercy. No backup, no cavalry coming. If things go bad, then I improvise. Like always. This isn't Afghanistan. These aren't insurgents. This is organized crime on their home turf. I know what it is, Clayton said, but it's the only way to get close. They won't talk if I'm wired for sound with a SWAT team around the corner. This has to be personal. One-on-one. Violet shook her head. At least let us position nearby. Kurt can set up with Overwatch. I'll be in a car monitoring frequencies. If you need an exit. No. Clayton's tone was final. They'll sweep the area. They'll check for surveillance. If they find anything, I'm dead and you're next. This works because I'm coming in clean. The only edge I have is that they think I'm someone I'm not. And the pen? Kurt asked, hidden in plain sight. It's a luxury pen. Alan Roman is a high-end investor. He'd carry something like this. It's consistent with the cover. Violet didn't look convinced. You're betting your life on a pen and a fake identity. I bet my life on worse. Clayton stood. We've got 24 hours. Let's use them. Kurt, I need you to run surveillance on Elaine and Jeremy. See what they're up to. If they're celebrating my death, I want photos. Video if possible. On it. Violet, keep monitoring the account. If anything flags before the meeting, I need to know immediately. Will do. What are you going to do? Clayton checked the Glock that Kurt had provided. A clean weapon, untraceable. He'd carry it up until the meeting, then stash it before going in. Just in case. I'm going to visit an old friend, he said. Someone who knows Mercado's operation from the inside. Who? Violet asked. Someone I sent to prison. The Petersburg Federal Correctional Complex sat 2 hours west of Norfolk, a sprawling facility that housed medium-security inmates. Clayton signed in using his military ID, waded through 3 security checks, and finally sat down in a visiting room that smelled of industrial cleaner and desperation. Ricardo Hunter walked in 10 minutes later, older than Clayton remembered, grayer, but still carrying himself with the swagger that had gotten him convicted of racketeering and money laundering 8 years ago. He'd been one of Mercado's enforcers, a lieutenant who knew where the bodies were buried because he'd helped bury some of them. He was also the man Clayton had helped put away, testimony from one of his covert operations used to seal the conviction. Ricardo sat down across the plexiglass divider and picked up the phone. Clayton Lowry, didn't expect to see you again. Thought you'd be off playing soldier somewhere. Retired, Clayton said. Congratulations. What brings you to my humble accommodations? Come to gloat. I need information. Yeah? What makes you think I'd help you? Clayton leaned forward. Because Omar Mercado tried to have me killed, and I'm going to return the favor. Thought you might enjoy watching him burn. Ricardo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Omar tried to kill you? Why? Long story. Short version. I'm collateral damage in one of his operations. He's partnered with a developer named Jeremy Cooley. They needed me out of the way. Cooley. Yeah, I know him. Slimy bastard. Mercado uses him to wash money. Ricardo tilted his head. And you're going after them how, exactly? I'm meeting with Mercado tomorrow, under a false identity. I'm going to get him on record connecting himself to the attempted murder. Then I'm going to use it to destroy him. A laugh. That's ambitious. Also stupid. Omar's not dumb. He'll see through you. Maybe. That's why I need your help. I need to know his tells. How he operates. What makes him trust someone. And if I help you, I'll make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated. Maybe shave a few years off your sentence. Ricardo considered this. You know the real reason Omar's lasted this long? He's paranoid. Trusts no one. Checks everything twice. You walk in there with a fake identity, he'll rip it apart. Unless what? Unless you give him something he wants more than caution. Omar's building an empire. Always looking to expand. You come in offering him access to something big, development rights, political connections, offshore accounts. He'll listen. Greed trumps paranoia every time. What specifically? Waterfront property. That's his obsession. He's been trying to get his hands on the old Bayside warehouse district for years. City won't sell, too much heat. But if you could offer him a way in, private investors, shell companies, whatever, he'd bite. Clayton filed that away. Anything else? Yeah, watch Chester Banks. He's Omar's enforcer now. My old job. He's loyal because Omar pays well, but he's not smart. You get Banks alone, you might be able to flip him. He doesn't have the stomach for the heavy stuff. That's why Omar keeps him running the club instead of in the field. Good to know. Ricardo leaned back. One more thing. Omar's got a temper. You push his buttons, he'll make mistakes. But you push too hard, he'll put a bullet in you and dump you in the harbor. Find a line. I'm good at finding lines. I hope so. For your sake. Ricardo hung up the phone and stood. Good luck, Lowry. You're going to need it. Chapter 7. Into the Lion's Den. The text came at 8 p.m. Pier 47. Warehouse B. 9 p.m. Come alone. Clayton dressed carefully. Expensive suit, rented, Italian shoes borrowed, the recording pen in his jacket pocket. He looked the part of Alan Roman, successful investor, a man comfortable with money and power. Kurt did a final equipment check. Recording pin is active. Battery at full. It'll capture everything within 15 feet. Good. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Violet handed him a slim folder containing the fake financial documents. Escrow agreement, wire transfer authorization, corporate papers. Everything looks legitimate. But remember, if he asks his lawyers to verify any of this, it falls apart fast. Then I'll make sure he doesn't. Clayton checked his watch. I need to leave. Clay. Kurt gripped his shoulder. If this goes sideways, if you don't walk out of there, then you call the FBI. Give them everything we've got. Make sure Mercado and Jeremy Cooley both go down. That's not what I meant. I know, but it's the deal. Clayton pulled Kurt into a brief embrace. I'll see you on the other side. He drove to Pier 47 in the rented Lexus, part of the Allen Roman cover. The warehouse district was exactly what he expected. Abandoned buildings, broken streetlights, the smell of salt water and decay. Warehouse B sat at the end of a crumbling dock, a two-story structure with no windows and one entrance. Two men in suits waited outside. They searched him thoroughly, patted him down, checked for weapons, ran a metal detector wand over his body. The recording pin drew a glance, but nothing more. Just an expensive accessory. Inside, one of them said, the warehouse interior was surprisingly clean, renovated into something between an office and a fortress. Conference table in the center, guard along the walls, and at the head of the table, Omar Mercado. He was smaller than Clayton expected, maybe 5'8", slim build, but with the kind of presence that filled a room. Expensive suit, manicured hands, and eyes like a shark, cold, calculating, always measuring. Chester Banks stood to his right, the big man from the Anchor Club. He looked at Clayton with mild interest, no recognition. Why would there be? Last time they met, Clayton had been a punching bag. Now he was Alan Roman, investor. Mr. Roman, Mercado said, his voice smooth. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Clayton sat, placing the folder on the table. Mr. Mercado, I appreciate you taking the time. $500,000 buys time. Mercado gestured to the folder. This is your proposal? Preliminary documents. Escrow agreement, proof of funds, corporate structure. My investors are very interested in the Bayside Warehouse District. We understand it's difficult to acquire through conventional means. Mercado's expression didn't change. The Bayside property is tied up in zoning disputes. The city won't sell. Cities can be persuaded with the right incentives, the right political pressure. Clayton leaned forward. My investors aren't concerned with conventional channels. They're concerned with results. We can provide financing, shell companies, offshore accounts, whatever structure minimizes scrutiny and maximizes profit. That's quite an offer. We're serious people, Mr. Mercado. We've done business in markets far more complicated than Norfolk. South America, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia. We know how to navigate complex regulatory environments. Mercado studied him. And what do you get out of this? 20% equity, management fees, and the satisfaction of turning a derelict warehouse district into luxury waterfront condos worth 9 figures. Chester leaned in and whispered something to Mercado. They had a brief, quiet conversation. Clayton kept his expression neutral, letting the pen in his pocket record every word, every gesture. Finally, Mercado turned back. Your credentials are impressive, Mr. Roman, but I'm a cautious man. I need to verify a few things before we proceed. Of course, due diligence is expected. Good. Then you won't mind if I have my people look into your background more thoroughly. Check your references. Verify your investors. This was the dangerous moment. If Mercado dug deep, the whole thing would collapse. Clayton needed to redirect. By all means, he said smoothly. But while your people are investigating me, I should mention that my investors have a timeline. We're looking at 3 similar opportunities: Norfolk, Baltimore, and Charleston. Whichever market we move on first gets the capital. I came here because Jeremy Cooley spoke very highly of your organization. Jeremy Cooley? Mercado's eyes sharpened. You know Jeremy? We've done business. He consulted on a project in Richmond last year. Impressive operation. He mentioned you were looking for strategic partners. Did he? Mercado's tone was flat. When did you speak with Jeremy? Last week. We had dinner at the Ocean View Club. He was very enthusiastic about potential collaboration. Mercado and Chester exchanged a look. Something passed between them, confusion, maybe concern. Interesting, Mercado said slowly. Because Jeremy hasn't mentioned any such meeting to me. Mistake. Clayton had made a mistake. He kept his face neutral, thinking fast. Perhaps he wanted to verify my credentials before bringing it to you. I understand he's been dealing with some personal matters recently. Divorce, I believe. You're very well informed, Mr. Roman. I make it my business to know who I'm working with. Clayton pulled out his phone, a clean burner with a fabricated contact list. If there's been a miscommunication with Jeremy, I can call him now. Clear it up. That won't be necessary. Mercado stood. Chester, why don't you reach out to Jeremy? See what he knows about Mr. Roman here. Sure thing, boss. Chester pulled out his phone and stepped away. Clayton's mind raced. If Chester called Jeremy, the whole thing would unravel. Jeremy had never heard of Alan Roman. He'd deny everything. And then Mercado would know this was a setup. Time to push. Mr. Mercado, I sense some hesitation. If you're not interested in the Bayside opportunity, I can take it to my investors in Baltimore. Sit down, Mr. Roman. Mercado's voice had gone cold. We're not done here. Chester returned, phone to his ear. His expression was troubled. Jeremy's not answering. Straight to voicemail. Mercado's jaw tightened. Where is he? I don't know. Want me to send someone to his place? Do that. Now. Mercado turned back to Clayton. It seems Jeremy is unavailable at the moment. Unfortunate timing. These things happen, Clayton said evenly. They do, but they also make me cautious. Mercado sat back down, his gaze never leaving Clayton's face. Tell me, Mr. Roman, how exactly did you get my number? Chester's personal cell is not public information. This was it, the moment where the con either held or broke. Jeremy gave it to me, Clayton said, along with his strong recommendation that I speak with you directly. He said you appreciate people who don't waste time. Jeremy gave you Chester's personal number. Is that a problem? Mercado smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. Only if you're lying. The warehouse doors burst open. 3 men dragged someone inside, bloodied, barely conscious. They threw him on the floor in front of the table. It was Jeremy Cooley. His expensive suit was torn and stained. Blood ran from his nose. One eye was swollen shut. He looked up at Mercado with an expression of pure terror. Omar, he gasped. I can explain. Can you? Mercado stood, walked over, and crouched beside Jeremy. Because I'm very curious, Jeremy. I just received a very interesting phone call. It seems someone claiming to be an investor named Alan Roman has been asking about our business arrangement. Someone who says you recommended him. Someone who knows far too much about our operations. Jeremy's gaze swung to Clayton. Confusion, then recognition, his eyes widening as he realized who he was looking at. That's not Alan Roman, Jeremy said. That's Clayton Lowry. He's supposed to be dead. The room went silent. Mercado turned slowly to face Clayton. Is that so? Clayton stood calmly, hands visible, making no sudden moves. Hello, Jeremy. Surprised to see me? You fell, Jeremy said, his voice cracking. We pushed you out of the plane. You're dead. Clearly not. Mercado's expression hadn't changed, but Clayton saw the calculation in his eyes. You're the husband, the one Jeremy and Elaine were trying to eliminate. That's right. And you came here into my operation under a false identity. Mercado shook his head slowly. That's either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Clayton admitted. But I needed to hear you say it. Needed you on record connecting yourself to the attempted murder. Which, by the way, he tapped his jacket pocket where the pen was recording. You just did. The guards raised their weapons. Clayton didn't flinch. Mercado held up a hand, stopping them. You're recording this conversation. Audio and video. Everything you've said. Everything Jeremy just confirmed. Clayton met his gaze. I came here to give you a choice, Mr. Mercado. Work with me, or go down with Jeremy. Work with you. Mercado laughed, a genuine sound. You have balls, Lowry. I'll give you that. But you're also a dead man. That recording means nothing if you don't leave here alive. True, except I'm not the only copy. My associates have everything. If I don't walk out of here in the next 10 minutes, it goes to the FBI, along with documentation of your money laundering operation, your connection to Cooley Development, and evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Mercado studied him. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to bet your empire on that? Silence stretched. Then Mercado smiled. A real smile this time, one that held genuine amusement. You know what? I believe you, which means we have a problem. We do. Jeremy here has become a liability. He was supposed to handle his domestic situation quietly. Instead, he created a mess. Tried to kill a former Army Ranger, badly, I might add, and brought you to my doorstep. Mercado looked down at Jeremy with disgust. That's sloppy. I don't tolerate sloppy. Jeremy scrambled backward. Omar, please. Shut up. Mercado turned back to Clayton. So here's my counter-proposal. You want revenge on Jeremy and your wife. I want Jeremy gone anyway. He's a liability I can't afford. What if we help each other? Clayton kept his expression neutral. I'm listening. You give me that recording. I make Jeremy disappear. Quietly, permanently. No trial, no publicity, no connection back to you. Your wife gets the message, backs off, and you both go your separate ways. Clean break. And if I refuse, then we kill you, find your associates, kill them too, and dispose of the evidence. It'll be messy, but I've cleaned up messes before. Clayton considered this. The original plan had been to get evidence and turn it over to authorities. Watch Mercado and Jeremy go to prison. But this was a different kind of justice. I need guarantees, he said. Jeremy disappears. Permanently. Elaine gets nothing from the insurance. And you never come after me or mine again. Agreed. On one condition, which is... Mercado gestured to Jeremy. You pull the trigger. Chapter 8. The Weight of Justice. The warehouse went silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Clayton looked at Jeremy Cooley, the man who'd beaten him, thrown him from a plane, tried to cash in his death. The man who'd seduced his wife and planned to steal his life insurance. Every instinct screamed for revenge. 20 years in the Rangers had taught him to eliminate threats without hesitation. But that was war. This was something else. No, Clayton said. Mercado raised an eyebrow. No, I'm not an executioner. Jeremy goes to prison. Legal process. Public trial. He gets to explain to a jury how he tried to murder a veteran for insurance money. That's very noble. Also very stupid. Mercado pulled a pistol from inside his jacket, a compact 9mm. He held it out. Last chance. You want justice? Real justice? This is it. Quick, clean, permanent. Clayton stared at the weapon. His hand twitched. He could do it. God knew Jeremy deserved it. One pull of the trigger, and everything would be over. No trial, no lawyers, no risk that Jeremy might walk on some technicality. But if he took that gun, if he became what Mercado wanted him to be, then he was no better than them. He'd survive the fall from that plane not through violence, but through skill, training, and sheer will to live. He'd built this entire operation on intelligence and planning, not bloodshed. He'd been a Ranger. Rangers didn't murder in cold blood. I said no. Clayton stepped back. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll give you a different option, which is, you cut Jeremy loose. Completely. End your partnership with Cooley Development. Seize his assets to cover any losses. Leave him broke and exposed. I take the evidence I've gathered, the recordings, the financial documents, the testimony, and I turn it over to the FBI. But, I give you 72 hours to clean house first. Move your money, shut down your operations, get out from under whatever jurisdiction they'll come after you with. In exchange, you provide testimony against Jeremy and Elaine. Full cooperation. You were just a businessman who got scammed by a developer and his accomplice. You had no idea they were trying to commit murder. Mercado laughed. And I'm supposed to believe the FBI will buy that. With the right lawyer? Yes. You weren't at that plane. You didn't give the order. Jeremy did all that on his own. You were just a silent investor who got played. Hell, you were trying to verify Alan Roman's credentials when the whole thing came apart. That's due diligence, not conspiracy. Mercado considered this, the pistol still in his hand. You're asking me to flip on Jeremy and your wife. Testify against them. Put myself in a courtroom. With immunity, I can arrange it. I know people at the FBI who will make that deal to get a conviction on attempted murder. And what do I get out of this? Besides avoiding prison, you get to walk away clean. The FBI gets Jeremy and Elaine. I get justice. And you get to rebuild your empire somewhere else, with the knowledge that if you ever come after me or mine again, I'll burn everything you've built to the ground. The two men stared at each other. Jeremy started to speak. Omar, you can't. Chester Banks kicked him in the ribs. Shut up. Mercado lowered the pistol. You're either the smartest man I've met or the luckiest. I haven't decided which. Can I be both? A slight smile. Maybe. Mercado holstered the weapon. Okay, Lowry. You got a deal. I'll cooperate. Testify against Jeremy and Elaine. But I want full immunity, witness protection if necessary, and your word that this recording never sees the light of day outside of official channels. Done. Clayton pulled out the recording pen, stopped the recording, and handed it to Mercado. This copy is yours. Insurance. I've got backups, but they stay sealed unless you break our agreement. Mercado pocketed the pen. Wise. Chester, get Jeremy out of here. Take him to the Anchor Club. Lock him up until the FBI comes for him. What about the woman? Chester asked. Elaine. Leave her. She's not my problem anymore. Mercado turned back to Clayton. You'll need to move fast. Once Jeremy's arrested, his lawyers will start making noise. You want this to stick, you need airtight evidence. I have it. Financial records, flight plans, testimony from the crew of the ship that picked me up, plus your statement. It's enough. Good. Mercado extended his hand. I'd say it was a pleasure doing business with you, but we both know that's a lie. Clayton shook it. Likewise. One more thing. Mercado's grip tightened slightly. You're good at this. The planning, the execution, the negotiation. If you ever want to change careers, I could use someone with your skills. I'll pass, but thank for the offer. Mercado released his hand. Shame. You'd have made a hell of a criminal. Clayton walked out of Warehouse B at 10:47 p.m. Kurt and Violet were waiting in a car 3 blocks away, monitoring police frequencies and ready to call in backup if needed. He climbed into the back seat. Well, Kurt asked. It's done. Mercado's going to cooperate. Jeremy's in custody, mob custody, but custody. We need to call the FBI now, before Mercado changes his mind. Violet already had her phone out. I've got a contact. Special agent in charge of the Norfolk field office. She owes me a favor. She dialed. Agent Martinez? Violet Perry. I need to report an attempted murder and bring you a witness willing to testify. Yes, I'm serious. Omar Mercado. No, I'm not joking. We need immediate protective custody for the witness and arrest warrants for Jeremy Cooley and Elaine Lowry. Because they tried to kill someone by throwing him out of an airplane, and we have recordings. Yes, actual recordings. I'll send you the location. She hung up. FBI will be at the Anchor Club in 20 minutes. Mercado's going to meet them there with his lawyer. They'll arrest Jeremy, and then they'll go for Elaine. Clayton leaned back against the seat. His ribs ached. His head throbbed. But for the first time in days, he felt like he could breathe. It's really over? Kurt asked. Almost. One more thing I need to do. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The FBI arrested Elaine Lowry at 2:37 a.m. Clayton watched from Kurt's truck, parked across the street from her house on Maple Street. Agents in tactical gear surrounded the property, knocked on the door, and took her into custody. She was wearing a silk robe and an expression of pure shock. She kept saying, I don't understand, over and over as they read her rights and led her to a waiting vehicle. Clayton felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a cold, empty certainty that justice was being served. Agent Martinez approached the truck. She was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. Mr. Lowry? I'm Special Agent Elena Martinez. I need to take your statement. Of course. They talked for 2 hours. Clayton told her everything. The deployment, the return home, the affair, the beating, the plane, the fall. He showed her his injuries. Provided documentation. Gave her contact information for Captain Wong and the crew of the Junhee. This is going to be a hell of a case, Martinez said. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy. And with Mercado's testimony, we can tie it all together. What about Mercado? He gets immunity, limited immunity. He cooperates, testifies, and we don't charge him with conspiracy to commit murder. But we're still looking at his other operations. Money laundering, racketeering, the usual. He might avoid prison on this case, but he's not walking away clean. Good enough. Martinez closed her notebook. Off the record, what you did, going into that warehouse, confronting Mercado, getting him a flip, that was incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid. I've heard that before, but it worked. Jeremy Cooley and Elaine Lowry are going away for a long time. Maybe 20 years. Attempted murder, aggravated assault, fraud. They won't see daylight until they're old. Clayton nodded. 20 years. Maybe that was justice. Maybe it wasn't enough. But it was something. What about you? Martinez asked. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Find a new place to live. File for divorce. Figure out what life looks like after this. If you need anything, counseling, victim services, whatever, the Bureau can help. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. She left him with a business card and a handshake. The trial took 9 months. Jeremy Cooley and Elaine Lowry were tried together, facing charges of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and aggravated assault. Omar Mercado testified for the prosecution, his testimony devastating in its detail. He described how Jeremy had approached him for capital, how the relationship evolved, and how Jeremy had mentioned a domestic problem that needed permanent resolution. He claimed he thought Jeremy meant divorce lawyers, not airplanes. The jury didn't buy it entirely, but with Violet Perry negotiating his immunity deal, Mercado walked on the murder charges. The FBI did arrest him 3 months later on separate charges related to his other operations, but that was a different case. Jeremy's defense tried to claim Clayton had fabricated the evidence, that the recording was inadmissible, that Mercado was lying to save himself. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, flight plans, testimony from the thugs who'd beaten Clayton, the ship's crew who'd found him. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Elaine's trial was shorter. She tried to claim she'd been coerced by Jeremy, that she'd feared for her life, that she hadn't known what he was planning. But the prosecution had her financial records, the siphoned funds, the new account, the communications with Jeremy about the life insurance. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Jeremy Cooley, 25 years, no parole. Elaine Lowry, 20 years, no parole. Clayton attended the sentencing, sat in the gallery, and watched as they were led away in chains. Elaine looked at him once, a brief, pleading glance that held no power anymore. He looked away. Outside the courthouse, Violet found him. How are you holding up? I'm okay. You sure? This is a lot to process. I've processed worse. He looked at the courthouse steps, where reporters were gathering for statements. Thank you. For everything. Just doing my job. No, you did more than that. You believed me when I sounded crazy. Helped me when it would have been easier to walk away. Well, Violet said with a slight smile, you made it interesting. Not every day I get to run a con on a mob boss and live to tell about it. Kurt approached, hands in his pockets. So what now, brother? You going to disappear into the wilderness? Become a hermit? Maybe. For a while. Clayton looked at both of them, the people who'd helped him survive this. But I think I've got a better idea, which is Gregory's firm is expanding, needs investigators with field experience. I'm thinking about signing on. Use what I learned. Help other people who got screwed by the system. Violet nodded approvingly. That's good work. Important work. Yeah, it is. Clayton extended his hand to Kurt. You want in? Greg could use someone with your skill set. Kurt grinned. Thought you'd never ask. They shook on it. 6 months later, Clayton Lowry stood on the deck of a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, watching the sun rise over the hills. The cabin was small, isolated, peaceful, exactly what he needed. He'd bought it with the settlement money from the divorce. Elaine had gotten nothing. Everything had been awarded to him in the proceedings. His phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. New case. Missing person. Family's desperate. Could use your help. Clayton read it twice, then replied, "Send me the details." He'd spent 20 years serving his country. Fought in wars most people would never know about. Come home to betrayal and murder. Survived a fall that should have killed him. Brought down the people who'd tried to destroy him. He'd earned his peace. But peace, he discovered, wasn't the same as retirement. He was a ranger. Rangers didn't quit. The sun climbed higher, painting the mountains in gold. Clayton Lowry finished his coffee, went inside, and started packing. There was work to do, and he was just getting started. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.